Last Sunday, I got ready to come to, go downstairs to get, ready for church and so forth, and came around the corner, took my first step to come down the steps, and in the process sneezed. And sneezing when you're going down the steps isn't the easiest thing to do at 6 o'clock in the morning. You can do it, but it was a calamity in my world. The arms were going one way, the legs were going another, the feet were going down. I didn't fall or anything like that. I stayed upright. But in the process of all that, movement, something in my leg stretched too far, let's just say. And, and I felt it. Like took a next step, and I was like, oh, I didn't feel that way 5 minutes ago. And, but I'm stubborn. And I had a lot to do that day. I was coming to church, had church to do, and after church I had a whole list of things needed to be done. So I just kept going. I kept pushing through and kept going through everything that I needed to do. And there were a couple times when I stepped up on these steps up here that I thought, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that, because I could feel it in my leg. It's not right, But I just kept going all day, pushing, because I had a schedule to keep. I had things that I needed to get ready for. Sunday is not my Sabbath. I might get an hour a little bit, but for the most part, I keep working all day long, and I take Sabbath on another day. And so I had a list of things I needed to get done on Sunday so that I could be ready for the rest of the week. Because sometimes a lot of what you do, you need to do and get ready so that somebody else can go and do what they need to do, right? And so I had things I needed to get ready for the week, so I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. About 11:30 that night is when I normally go to bed, and so I started up the stairs to head to our bedroom, and I could barely get up the stairs because I had just pushed and pushed and pushed all day long and done everything I could. Well, I thought, okay, I'll sleep on it. It'll be fine. Well, the next morning I got up, and it was even worse. And so I thought, okay, Lord, I hear you. I hear you. The one thing I didn't do was I didn't stop and slow down and just rest a little bit and take care of myself when I needed to take care of myself. I just kept pushing because I had a schedule to keep. I had things to do. And many of you know this. You've got schedules that are so tight, you can't get one more thing in them. You've got to-do lists that just keep on growing by the hour and getting longer and longer. And the demands that are on you to do all the things that you need to get done just continue to increase. And so you're pushing yourself to get everything done that you can absolutely get done. And there's no time for you to rest. You just don't take that time. Or you might give yourself a few minutes. You might give yourself 5 or 10 minutes or a half an hour even, but to really take the time to let your body rest. But it's not just your body, it's your mind, it's your spirit as well. So I'm not talking just even about physical rest. I'm also talking about that emotional rest and that spiritual rest that we need in order to continue to do all the things that God has called us to do, not the things that the world has told us we need to do. Because it's so easy to put that schedule and that list in front of what God has given us to do. And suddenly, what takes last place? How many of you have started a new prayer plan or a new scripture reading or a new devotional plan only within a few weeks find out that you've already crammed enough into your schedule that it's gotten pushed out? Because that's what the enemy wants us to do. That's what the enemy wants us to do. Jesus says in Matthew 11, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Does anyone feel weary today? Do you feel like you're carrying around a load of stuff from place to place to place? Whether it's, your to-do list or whatever it is, you've got a burden of something on yourself that you're just moving it from place to place. And you don't know what to do with it. You don't know how to release it because it's commitments that you've made. You don't know how to let go of it. But you're weary. You're tired. You just don't know what to do next. We're in that time of the summer where we just have a few weeks before school starts, and we're all trying to cram everything in these next few weeks that we can possibly. I have a list of things that I had wanted to do with Bentley this summer, and I haven't gotten any of them done, or most of them done, because I've been too busy doing other things. So he's taken a back seat to this schedule and list that I've got. And I have to be careful that I don't also put God in that back seat as well. Today we're going to look at the idea of rest and what it means to our lives and how it is that we can change our way of thinking so that we position ourselves in a place where God can truly nurture us. If you're working towards something, if you're working on something, if you're pushing through something and you don't feel like you're making any leeway, it just might mean because you're not taking the time to step back and let God work in your life. Scripture says, be still and know that I am God. We want to fix everything, but it's not always ours to fix. It's God's to fix. This is a picture of a cave. How many of you know the story of Elijah? Elijah was a prophet of Israel. He had been called by God to go to Israel and give them the message that God wasn't happy with them, that they had fallen into sin once again. They were worshiping the idol god, pagan god Baal. King Ahab, the king of Israel, had married Jezebel of Sidon, and they had created this sinful union between the two of them. And when Jezebel had come into Israel, she brought with her all of her pagan worship. And she ended up destroying all of the prophets of Israel, or at least she thought she had destroyed all of them, because she wanted her prophets to be the one, her prophets to be the one to preach of God, not the God, but her gods, the god of Baal. And the god of Baal and Jezebel herself were just evil. The things that they were doing were so evil in the sight of God that God had become so angry with Israel that he was warning them of the calamity to come if they did not change their direction and move in a different direction. And Elijah was the one who was bringing that message of warning to Israel. And so for 3 years, Elijah had come to Ahab and professed what it was that God was trying to say. And Ahab had totally ignored him. Jezebel, she wore the pants in the family, and what she said went. And she said, no, we're going to worship this God. We're not worshiping your God. We're going to get rid of your prophets. I want my prophets to come in. And she just continued to destroy Israel in her act of worshiping of her God and the way she was bringing that into Israel. And Elijah was fighting against this. He was trying to serve God as best he could to bring the message. And all kinds of calamities happened. As I said, Jezebel had killed all of the prophets of Israel except for 100 of them who had been tucked away safely in caves and were hidden there. She didn't know about them. Everyone else she had destroyed. There was a drought. There was a battle between the God, our God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the gods of Baal, in which an altar was built and an offering was placed on it. And Elijah challenged the prophets to rain down their gods, bring them down and have them receive the offering. And for days they had prayed and nothing had happened. And then Elijah came and he built an altar for the Lord. And he placed an offering on top of it. And then he poured buckets and buckets and buckets of water on it until there was water all around this altar. And then he called upon the Lord to come down. And God sent a fire, a flame, down upon the altar and consumed not only the offering, but all of the water around the offering and the altar, to prove that he was the one true God, that these other gods were all false gods. And Elijah was in the midst of that. And soon after, Elijah called all of the people of Israel to take their swords and slay all of the prophets of Baal. And so 400 of the prophets of Baal were slain or killed that day that Elijah assembled everyone to do God's work. And it was after that Jezebel sent a warning to Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 19. Jezebel sends this warning to Elijah the prophet. Now Ahab had told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life as one of them." So Jezebel is telling him, I'm out to make your life miserable. And beyond that, I'm out to kill you. You've got 24 hours. And I'm out to kill you. Excuse you. It's okay. It's a good dinner. But Jezebel was furious with Elijah. She was done with Elijah. And she wanted him gone. Now, what do you think Elijah, the prophet of the Lord, who had seen God move in so many ways over the last many years of his life, what do you think he did? Do you think he stood up and said, I'm ready for the fight. My God is better than your God? Do you think he pushed into Jezebel and said, go ahead and try? My God is better than your God. I've seen God work miracles. And he's going to work a miracle here? No, that's not at all what Elijah did. Elijah says, verse 3 says, Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. Elijah, the prophet of the Lord, who had come to speak on behalf of the Lord, who had seen God move in so very many ways, was suddenly afraid of what? Words, a threat, a timeline. You have 24 hours and you will be dead. Now, Jezebel hasn't done anything at all. She's just told him she's going to do something. You ever tell your kids that you're going to do something and they know good and well that you're really not going to do it? I mean, you got to be careful of those false promises, you know. You're going to punish them. They do something. If you don't do that one more time, I'm going to send you to your room. And they just look at you, especially if they're under the age of 2. They just look at you and proceed to do exactly what it is you told them not to do because they knew you weren't going to do anything to begin with, right? That's not what Elijah did. He was so afraid of the words that Jezebel had said to him that he cowered. And he ran. He eventually finds himself in a cave. But before he gets to that cave, we see kind of some insight into the condition of Elijah and why and how he found his way in that cave. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush and sat down under it and prayed that he might die. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. All at once, an angel touched him and said, Get up and eat. He looked around, and there at his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and lay down again. The angel of the Lord came to him back to a second time and touched him and said, Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you. So he got up and he ate and he drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. And there he went into the cave and he spent the night. The first question that God asks him when he speaks to Elijah in the cave is, What are you doing here? What are you doing here? Why are you? How did you find yourself in this cave? Elijah's first mistake was he isolated himself. He left Israel, he left Judah, and he went into the wilderness, and he sent his servant, you stay here, I'm going on. I'm separating myself from you. And I can tell you that last week, by the end of the night, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I felt so bad. I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to be alone. Just leave me alone. I don't feel good. Well, you don't feel good because you didn't rest today. That's why you don't feel good. If you just would have taken care of yourself, you would have been fine. But that's not what I did. I just pushed forward like I do. Elijah has been working so hard for God for the last 3 months, or 3 years, and he says, I've had enough, Lord. I've done everything I can to serve you. I've done everything you told me to do. And I'm tired. I can't do anymore. Do you ever feel like that? That you get to that point where you can't do anymore? I've done everything I can to make this situation better. I've done everything I can to succeed in this area. I've done everything I can to prevent this from happening. And I can't do anymore. And you don't know what to do. So what do? You withdraw and you isolate yourself. And you move yourself away from people who can encourage you, people who can nurture you, people who can nourish you. That's what Elijah does. So he's heard these words from Jezebel, this threat that has a timeline on it. And that timeline is what's pressing him to take these next steps because he's so afraid of what she's going to do in the next 24 hours. So he goes off into the wilderness. He says, Lord, I've had enough. I'm done. Can't do any more. Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors. I just want to die. I just want out of this. I don't want to do this anymore. Let me out. That's what he's saying. And he lays down under the bush and he falls asleep. And maybe he thought he was just going to lay down right there and die. I don't know. But he falls asleep. So obviously his body needed something. Miss Mert said last week, I talked to her yesterday, she said, I'm so sorry I missed church last week. I said, were you okay? Was things okay? She said, oh yeah, I just overslept. I said, don't worry, you probably needed it. Your body needed it because Miss Mert doesn't oversleep. And so she was here today. So the next thing that happens after Elijah sleeps for a while is an angel comes to him and he brings the water and the bread. And the angel touches him on the shoulder and says, get up and eat. So there's nourishment there that he needs to take into his body. But first he tells him to change your position. Change your posture. Change your point of view, your perspective. And sometimes that's what we need to do. We definitely need to do it in relation to how it is that we allow God's rest to come upon us. And Elijah, or the angel says to him, get up. Get up from that laying down position, that submissive position, and stand up into a position where you're ready to see, to look. Change your posture, change your position, and we need to do that. We need to do that. And then the angel says, eat. And so Elijah gets up and he eats, and he lays down again, and he goes back to sleep. And he sleeps for a while again. And a second time, the angel comes to him, touches him on the shoulder, and says, get up and eat. Why? The journey is too much for you. I don't know about you guys, but there are things that I'm looking ahead of me in which I know I cannot achieve, nor can I endure by myself. I can't do it alone. The journey that is ahead of me that I need to take is too hard for me to do by myself. I need to be strengthened. I need to be encouraged. I need to have somebody with me. And the angel is saying to Elijah, you've got a journey ahead of you. You need to get up. now and eat, nourish yourself. And that nourishment isn't just the food we take into our bodies. We need to nourish our spiritual lives as well. Have you ever heard the phrase, there but by the grace of God go I? If I were not in God's grace, I could not endure the world I live in. I can't. It's too hard. I would succumb to the evils of this world in a heartbeat if I did not have God on my side fighting for me, because I'm human and I'm weak and I'm sinful and I know it. And the journey ahead of me is still hard and long, and I need to be ready for it. And what I need to do is I need to rest and nourish myself so that I can be ready to do what it is God has called me to do. Now, mind you, in all of this, Jezebel is nowhere. She's still not done anything to come after Elijah, nothing. This is all Elijah responding and reacting to her words. And what does he do? He runs and he hides in a cave, in a darkness, isolated, separated from the people who care for him, who can nurture him, and can then lift him up. And sometimes that's what happens to us. By Sunday night, I didn't want to be around anyone. I just wanted to be by myself. I just wanted to crawl under the blanket and just hurt, because that's kind of where I was feeling. Monday morning, I got up, and one of the things I do on Monday is I read the lectionary for the week. It's a series of texts that are used then for a lot of folks to preach from for the week, and I read that on Mondays to see where what's going on and where God leads me. And this week, all of the texts had to do with rest. Every one of them. Every one of them. So what I did on Monday was I got up and I did what I should have done on Sunday. I stretched. I took some aspirin, and I laid around all day, playing with my grandson, doing work here and there. And by Monday evening, I didn't hurt anymore. I didn't have any problem getting up the steps. I just gave myself the time that God needed me to take to rest and let him minister to me. And part of that was listening to podcasts throughout the day, listening to music throughout the day, reading scripture, whatever it was that I could get into that day, I did. And I just let God be God. I didn't worry about the schedule, didn't worry about the list. I just focused it on God that day. And it was such a good day. And by the end of that day, I was feeling pretty good. And I still am. I haven't had any pain since then. If we don't take the time to stop and rest, God will make us lie down. Psalm 23 is one of the readings from the lectionary this week. And it begins, "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing." What am I chasing? What am I pushing for? What am I trying to achieve? What successes am I trying to achieve that God says, you don't need that. I've already taken care of everything for you. I just need you to be my sheep. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Now, what about a God who knows he's going to have to make his children lie down? You have to make kids lie down, right? If you're if you've got, again, someone under the age of probably 5, we'll bump that. Even sometimes we even say this to my husband, go take a nap. Because they're so grumpy, they're so arguing about everything, they're fighting over everything. Everything is just the day is just miserable. What's the thing that you say to them? go take a nap. And when they get up, usually things are so much better. You make them lie down. And when they get up, the world is just different. God makes us lie down. And when we don't take the time to lie down, he will put things away in our way in which forces us to lie down. And I think that's what God did this week for me. He simply said, you gotta stop. You gotta stop for a little bit. You're losing your focus. You just gotta stop. You ever tried to make a sheep lie down? Can you make a sheep lie down, Trent? Can you make a sheep lie down? You can't make a sheep lie down. Sheep will only lie down when they feel safe and fed. And then they'll lay down. But until then, they're on their feet, they're moving. And that's kind of the way we are. We need to feel safe, and we need to feel nourished, and then we will rest. And if we don't keep that going in our lives, God will make a way for us to get it, to separate ourselves out so that we can rest. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. It's your soul that God is worried about. It's not your bank account. It's your soul that God is worried about, not all the things that you might have. It's your soul that God is worried about, not keeping up with the Joneses or even the world or anything else. Just simply keeping up with him and letting him be your focus and your first thing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths. Why? For his name's sake. All this to glory God. That he would love us so much that he would see the need to set aside time for us to rest. Jesus, over and over in Scripture, goes off to rest. He goes off privately to pray and to be alone and get away from the crowd. When he's in the boat and the winds are blowing and the disciples don't know what to do, what's he doing? Anybody? He's taking a nap in the bottom of the boat. He's having a nap. He needed to rest. But not us. We want to keep pushing. We want to keep worrying about things we can't control. We want to keep worrying about things that we really don't have any business worrying about. That's what Elijah was doing. Now, if you know the rest of the story of Elijah, you know that Elijah, King Ahab actually dies before Elijah. And Elijah is taken away in a chariot, and he never dies. There's nothing that Jezebel could do to him that God didn't want done. God had already had him protected. God had his back. Elijah had nothing to worry about except what his own mind told him to worry about. And he was worried because he was tired. And he had lost his focus. And so sometimes when we feel like we've got all this pressure on us, bearing down all these demands, we need to step back and reconsider what it is that's on the plate. What's on the schedule? What's taking up our time? And consider where it is Jesus is in all of that. If he's not first, if he's not the thing, everything else will overtake him. And everything else will fill up our minds and our spirits and our lives. And eventually, we'll be in a cave, hiding out, away from even God, because we are tired. So, rest. Take the time that you need to rest. Give your kids time to rest. Give your marriage time to rest. Give your family time to rest. Give just everything about yourself. Take the time you need to rest. Let your body heal and let your spirit soar. Because if you don't, it's your relationship with Jesus that's going to hurt the most. And that's the worst thing.